Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the House Environment and Transportation Committee. We have 11 bill hearings this afternoon. We are going to start with HB 513, introduced by the Speaker on behalf of the Lieutenant Governor and the administration. Motor Vehicles Work Zone Speed Control Systems, Maryland Road Worker Protection Act of 2024. Let's welcome Lieutenant Governor Miller back to the House of Delegates. Come on up with your panel.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me here. If it's all right with you, I'd like to bring my panel up as well. You're welcome. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the Transportation Environment Committee. I am thrilled to be back in the House in front of your committee. I'm Ragina Miller, Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. I'm testifying in support of the Moore-Miller administration's House Bill 513, Maryland Road Worker Protection Act. Across Maryland, on any given day, there are approximately 300 construction sites with 1,000 dedicated roadway workers. Last year, there were 1,200 work zone crashes. That's over 3 crashes every single day. So for the people who work on these sites, it's not a matter of if they will experience a crash on their job site. It's a matter of when. I spent 25 years in my career as a transportation engineer, and I've been on these construction sites, and let me tell you, it's incredibly dangerous. House Bill 513 protects the men and women who place themselves in harm's way on the front line of service. It is a moral imperative that we protect road workers who provide critical public service that we each benefit from. This is how we make Maryland a state that serves. In March 2023, the work zone crash on Interstate 695 instantly killed 6 workers. 2 of the victims were a father and a son, Malon and MJ Simmons. I'm honored to be joined by their loved ones today. Soon after the tragic crash, Governor Moore established a work zone safety group. We assembled a diverse team, including MDOT administrators, highway engineers, safety inspectors, law enforcement, labor, and construction workers. We're also deeply grateful to have had the participation of E&T member Delegate Ziegler, as well as Senator Kelly. To spark a culture change among drivers and curb reckless driving and speeding, the Work Zone Safety Group recommended that a strategy that included education, engineering, and enforcement be implemented. House Bill 513, the Maryland Road Worker Protection Act, focuses on the enforcement piece. The use of automated speed enforcement systems, otherwise known as speed cameras, in work zones was approved by the Maryland General Assembly in 2009. The bill utilizes technologies that weren't available 15 years ago and strengthens enforcement in order to change driver behavior. House Bill 513 proposes the following: removing the requirement that speed camera be manned by a person physically at the work site, allowing multiple speed cameras to be utilized throughout the entirety of the work zone. But the bill includes a provision that prevents drivers from receiving multiple fines within a single work zone. Studies have shown that work zones with multiple speed cameras throughout a work zone are more effective in reducing speeds and crashes than work zones with a single camera that only slows a driver at a single point in time. Maryland's work zone citations amount is currently the lowest in the nation at $40. House Bill 513 raises the amount to $290. This amount is not random. This is the same citation amount a driver would receive when pulled over by a law enforcement officer violating a speed within the work zone. Revenue collected through the work zone speed cameras will be reinvested into highway work zones and safety initiatives. And finally, we are proposing an amendment that would expand the eligibility of the work zone speed camera systems to more locally maintained roadways and permit local governments to utilize revenue from their work zone speed camera systems for local public and roadway safety projects. The people of Maryland stand with us in their support for these actions. As part of the work group, we administered a public survey on what it would take to change their driving behavior. And of the 2,200 respondents, 66% said that increased citation amounts for speeding in work zones would change their driving behavior. We know enforcement alone is not enough to make this culture change. MDOT has already invested $500,000 on an aggressive public safety awareness campaign to educate drivers, and we're not done yet. We need to bring a culture change in driver behavior. We know that it can be done because it's been done before. The culture change surrounding drivers wearing seatbelts looked very different just 35 years ago. But through education, engineering, and enforcement, the culture changed, and today, usage exceeds over 90% compliance. We can do the same with work zones. However, the impact of culture change we're creating goes beyond just work zones. Safer driving in work zones will lead to safer driving everywhere. By intercepting dangerous driving habits, we can lower the number of crashes and fatalities across Maryland roads, making it safer for state road workers, motorists, passengers, cyclists, and pedestrians. I ask for your favorable report on House Bill 531. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor. Do you want your panelists to speak and then we can do some questions?
Sure, that'd be okay, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Chair Korman and committee, thank you for allowing me to testify today on behalf of this bill. I'm Teri Soos, Deputy Administrator of Operations for the Maryland State Highway Administration. I had the honor of being part of the Governor's Work Zone Safety Work Group. The group was comprised of 29 individuals with diverse experience, and we split into two groups. The Driver Behavior Subcommittee focused on educating drivers to slow down, move over, drive sober, and avoid distraction, the same types of good decisions that help drivers keep themselves and other roadway users safe as well. This time with a special emphasis on the changing conditions and vulnerable workers within a work zone. The Roadway Operations Subcommittee focused on planning, designing, and operating of work zones. We discussed many aspects, including best practices, training, as well as exploring the latest technology available. To offer some context on the size of this challenge, on an average day, there are 300 work zones on Maryland state roads with 1,000 individuals working in these areas. They are building our transportation infrastructure, performing maintenance activities, or providing critical utility services. In 2023, there were more than 1,200 crashes in work zones, including 8 worker fatalities and another 20 workers injured as a result. Between the two work groups, we covered the trifecta of education, engineering, and enforcement. Many of these recommendations relevant to the State Highway Administration are already implemented or are underway. These include: instill a culture of safety among our teams. Our people are our priority, and we must consistently reinforce that. One way we are doing this is for every operation to hold a morning huddle or tailgate talk to inform the crew members of the work plan and the potential dangers. We are updating and adding new trainings and certifications to ensure the most up-to-date standards, guidance, and best practices are being implemented statewide. When possible, we can plan to close a roadway and detour traffic or close lanes by coordinating with communities and businesses. And we are using innovations such as automated flagger devices and smart work zones, which alert drivers that they are approaching a work area. No matter how good we get at the engineering side, we know there will still be large risks if drivers are driving aggressively, impaired, or distracted. The Driver Behavior Subcommittee came up with many great ideas to inform and educate drivers on the complexity of work zones and the importance of driving safely, and Governor Moore announced funding to help with these important efforts. However, the third E, enforcement, is also a needed strategy. Maryland State Police have been a great partner, and a live officer is our best form of enforcement. But this is a limited resource, and the officer is also at risk on the side of the highway. We are asking for your assistance today to supplement the enforcement efforts with revised automated speed enforcement legislation. This bill provides greatly needed flexibility to use a manned or unmanned camera in work zones and increase our deployments to help ensure safer speeds in work zones. Through these multiple efforts with education, engineering, and enforcement, we can start to make our work zones safer, and those people that travel through them, but especially the workers building and maintaining our critical infrastructure, will be safer. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and the members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. It's good to be back here in this committee room again in this session. Thank you for allowing me to testify on House Bill 513, Motor Vehicles Work Zone Speed Control System Revisions, also known as the Maryland Road Workers Protection Act of 2024. For the record, I'm Saif Ratul, Deputy Legislative Officer for Governor Westmore. We have heard from Madam Lieutenant Governor as well as the SHA Deputy Administrator about the seriousness of this matter in front of us. Protecting our road workers who wake up every morning, don on their reflective high-vis vests, and show up to do the vital work to improve and maintain our roads. This legislation is based on a comprehensive set of recommendations from the Work Zone Safety Work Group that was tasked with finding solutions to protect our roadway workers and change the driving culture here in Maryland. So at this point, I will highlight a few key parts of the bill. First, the bill increases fines for work zone speeding violations. Maryland has one of the lowest in the nation work zone automated speed enforcement citation. And this bill aims to increase that to $290, which is in par with someone who's been stopped for the same violation by a police officer. For repeat offenders with 3 or more citations, the fine amount would be up to $1,000. Second, this legislation expands the enforcement flexibility by authorizing multiple cameras in one single work zone area, allowing to remote or automation in the control system, and eliminating the 30-day warning period requirement. Third, this bill aims to prevent drivers from being cited multiple times for speeding through the single work zone. And lastly, the bill reinvests the additional revenue generated by increased citations in the programs designed to change driver behavior and supports the much needed additional law enforcement and equipment resources in work zone. The administration is offering several amendments to this bill. And few of them are authorizing counties and local jurisdictions to receive revenue from a work zone speed camera that they set up, and expanding the number of roadways eligible for work zone safety speeding cameras as well. The goal here is to shift a dangerous driving behavior trend that we are seeing now that could unalterably change the life of a roadway worker who just showed up to do their job. With that, I respectfully request a favorable committee report. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the Lieutenant Governor or her panel? Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good to see you again.
Great to see you.
This very important bill. I just want to make sure I clarify and understand something correctly. So via the amendment, the technical changes are going to go further than just the work zone, and will allow counties or municipalities to have speed cameras on different roads more, I'd say, away from just school zones. Am I reading that correctly?
Delegate Morgan, how we are proposing this is that it would be only on work zone areas, along local roadways that are posted 45 miles an hour or more.
Okay, so they'll bill exclusively for work zones and nothing else.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Delegate Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for bringing this bill forward. Just a comment, most people in my district don't make $290 a day. Yeah. So that made me think a little bit on that amount of money. And I do think many of the people that don't obey, I shouldn't say obey, but go through the work zone areas, they might have a lot on their mind. It might be their family that day. They might have a child sick at home. They don't get the benefits of going or having leave off of work and so forth. So the $290 did kind of affect me. So my question is, the companies that put these cameras up, monitor them, maintain them, what percentage of that money will they receive?
Do you know that?
Sure. Thank you for your question. So we pay, we have a contract with a contractor, and we pay for that contract. They do not receive costs for the citations. We have a 5-year contract with them, and which is bid out competitively, and they receive the revenue from that contract, not per citation, and we cover administrative costs, and then the revenue, as Lieutenant Governor said, currently some of it goes to the state police, and additional revenue would come back to work zone safety.
So with this bill moving forward, will that change the language in their contract to where they'll get 30, 40, 50% of this money? Because I know some of the camera companies get a percentage of the citation. And I would like to think if there's going to be a lot of money to be made for the camera companies, it would be time that the state look at having their own employees put the cameras out and do the work on them necessary to keep them certified. Because I would like to know how much money they're going to be receiving from this bill. That would be important to me.
Sure. So approximately the administrative cost of the program, which includes our fees to the contractor, are about $5 million per year. This includes costs to pay the Maryland State Police and MDTA police to review the citations. That pays the salaries and fringe benefits for state employees who are in charge of the program. And it pays for the vendor payments to the contractor as well. So
that's going to be their approximate total for all of the highways. I forget the number you had mentioned that we have classified as work zones. So that one fee will take care of all of those highways and work zone areas.
Well, so that is for our current number of deployments. So if we increase the number of deployments with the flexibility in this bill, we would expect to have a new contract based on the number of cameras or deployments that would be using, but it would be approximately within an order.
Again, I think it would be good for me to see if the state could recoup more of that amount that you're trying to get to, or try to. I'd just like to see the maximum amount of money stay in the state of Maryland.
Yes.
So if that means getting our state roads people or whoever, getting them the training, I think that would be worth looking into, in my opinion.
Thank you.
And I do I hope you think about people in Western Maryland. $290,000 or $290 is a lot of money.
Becker, I always think of folks from Western Maryland.
Well, then let's get 81 done.
No, but to further follow up on Administrative Soos here, regarding the speed cameras, currently they have to be manned. So that's part of the fees that go in. That means you have to have a physical person there holding the camera, and that's the tickets that you would get. Right. This, the proposal we're saying is to have it unmanned. So possibly the fees associated with deploying these cameras could actually go down when it comes to contractors, because now we're just talking about a camera being there as opposed to an individual holding the camera and utilizing it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor, for being here. I support this bill. I think it's a great bill. I have a question referencing the amendment that Saif referenced for counties and allowing them to receive revenue for cameras they've set up and established. Has there been any thought referencing putting parameters and guidelines about how the counties have to actually spend that money and where they can put its awards? For example, some counties have issues with their maintenance of effort or maintaining their local roadways. And so could it be possible, are you amenable to jurisdictions having red tape on where they have to put that revenue towards?
That's a great question, Delegate Long. Thank you. So our intention is for any cameras that are going to be deployed at local county roadways or municipalities, they need to use the revenue that's generated the same exact way we, the state, would be utilizing it, which is that it would go directly into making our work zones safer. And if necessary, also with law enforcement to be able to have, officers to physically be on the roadways and issuing citations. That's all it would go to and nowhere else.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Delegate Nawrocki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to see you, Lieutenant Governor. First of all, I want to thank you for the dialogue that we've had ongoing throughout this. It's been very helpful. My question is, and it's not a curveball, it's one that we've talked about. If there's been any consideration to look into the stolen tags, the issue that we talked about, I think it's important to make sure that we're not sending citations to individuals that, have had their vehicle stolen. So has there been any thought about that and how we might be able to kind of proactively see if someone's vehicle or if the tag has been stolen in this bill?
So, Delegate, I know that you mentioned 3 different matters to me when we met together. So I believe, Chrissy Nizer, Administrator at MBA, can answer that question for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and good afternoon, committee. For the record, my name is Chrissy Nizer, MBA Administrator. Yeah, thank you for the question. This issue's come up in the past. What happens when somebody has a stolen tag and reports it to us as stolen? We actually mark that in the vehicle. We made a change based on actually feedback from some legislators about their constituents getting citations. And so that information is actually not shared with the flagging jurisdictions anymore if we have it marked as stolen in our system. It is important that constituents know it's not just enough to go to law enforcement, but to provide us with that report as well. So then MBA records, it's marked because that's where the flagging jurisdictions come to get that information. But happy to follow up with you on that.
Sure. And I certainly appreciate that. But I think to your point, I think a lot of constituents may not know that they should be taking that step with the MVA. I think it would be helpful if we were proactively communicating with law enforcement. I also think it's a tool that, frankly, law enforcement might want to know that there's, a lot of stolen vehicles riding around a particular camera. I think it could be useful for law enforcement as well. So I would appreciate sort of that consideration inside of this legislation.
We'll work with you on some follow-up.
Thank you.
Delegate Foley from District 15.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor, for being here. It's great to see one of my constituents testifying in front of this committee. My question is, Madam Lieutenant Governor, you went over some statistics at the very beginning of your presentation. Could you go over those again for me, please? The numbers of accidents and citations. You had a list. Yeah, if you could go over that again.
Sure. And Delegate Foley, love to have you representing me in District 15. Essentially what we have right now on any given day, there are 300 construction zones and over 1,000 construction workers at these sites. In 2023, there were 1,200 crashes along work zones. So that's averaging over 3 a day.
Thank you. So we have 3 a day crashes essentially in work zones across the state of Maryland. And isn't it fair to say that if we could, we would have state police patrolling those areas to make sure that they were safer if we were able to do that? Isn't that fair to say?
It absolutely is, but do we have the resources to have state law enforcement officers at 300 different work zones? And, sometimes work zones, they're not just a couple of 100 feet. They could be 6 miles long or 5 miles long, whatever it may be. So we would have to deploy law enforcement officers throughout the whole entire work zone activity as well.
Right. And so isn't it also fair to say that the use of these cameras as proposed in this bill would be to ensure the safety of those work zones without having to do that deployment, so that our law enforcement could do other things, and not to mention the fact that they couldn't cover all of the 1,200 work sites that were out there. Isn't that also fair to say?
It is absolutely fair to say, and I think it's also important to your point that we need to protect our law enforcement officers, because every single time that they pull a driver over for speeding or whatever it may be, they don't know what they're being exposed to in that situation. So if we can protect them more, the better we are serving the people of Maryland.
Thank you. And one last question, if I could, Mr. Chair. And if law enforcement, if police officers are deployed at work sites and they are patrolling and watching for excessive speeders in the work zones, how much would the fine be that they, for the citation that they would issue if they were there in person?
Well, it varies. So first off, in Maryland, if there is a posted speed limit, let's just say 45 miles an hour on the roadway, a driver can exceed it by 12 miles an hour, and then the speed camera would be deployed in that case, right? So if they're 13 miles an hour over, they'd get a ticket. But with the police officer, they can possibly even do it under that amount. So the fines vary from $290 to $1,000, depending on the amount of speed they're over the posted speed limit. In addition to that, they could also issue points for reckless driving.
So in other words, the fines here are very comparable to what the fines would be if the police officers were patrolling the work sites. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor. Always good to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you for bringing your team and for this bill. It's important, as we discussed. I thank you for the outreach, the one-on-one outreach. As we discussed, my one concern was around what happened for a number of years in the District of Columbia, where there would be posted work zones with these higher fines, and then the city would leave those signs in place, leave the designation long after the work had finished. And as I discussed with you, this creates frustration, cynicism. I know because I heard multiple stories about one spot in particular in the district, and I know because my daughter actually got a ticket in that area long after the construction had ceased. So my question is to State Highway, what will you do to ensure that those zones, those designations go away in a timely manner after the work is completed?
Sure. Thank you for your question. So we can write it into our business practices to ensure that we're continuously looking at that when they are active, when they are complete, and ensure that, as we said, we have 300 work zones on an average day. We have plenty of places where we would like to deploy cameras. So we have other locations. So I think it's just writing into our business practices, coordinating very closely with the people executing the work and our contractor to ensure that those are indeed active work zones.
And thank you very much for that. And quick follow-up, is there an appeal process if there is a mistake where an area continues to be designated as a construction zone when it is not anymore?
I will have to follow up with you on that. Other than the court system, I'm not entirely sure, but I will follow up with you on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I do not see any more questions to the Lieutenant Governor or her panel, so thank you very much for coming back to the House of Delegates. We have another panel from the Lieutenant Governor. We'll bring up David Ryan from the Maryland State Police, Michael Sacada from MTBMA, and Howard Bostick from the State Highway Administration. And just a fair warning, we're going back to our timer system now that the second highest elected official in the state has left the table. So. Please proceed when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Korman, members of the committee. My name is Howard Bostick. I am a Maryland State Highway Administrator, and I work at Maryland State Highway Administration, Emergency Response Tech for CHAR. I am a member of the Driver Behavioral Subcommittee work group led by Administrator Nizer. I bring a unique perspective to the work zone group. My office are work zones, and emergency response techs respond directly to incidents that occur on our roadways, including assisting stranded motorists, providing traffic management, and supporting law enforcement and fire rescue departments on scene of crashes. I have firsthand the recklessness of distracted drivers' behavior, motorists when they are traveling through work zones. People continue to speed, don't move over, and it makes our job even more unsafe than it already are. Unfortunately, in December 2022, I was involved in a work zone crash on the JFX. We got called for a rollover vehicle, which is a crash where the vehicle rolled over. I got there, Baltimore City Fire was there. I activated my emergency lights, airborne, pushed them over to the left at lane 3 block. Soon as I got finished putting all my stuff out, got out of the truck and went up to talk to the lieutenant. He said, "Watch out." Guy in my car hit my truck at 70 miles an hour. So unfortunately, if I was in there, I'd probably be retired right now, because who knows what injuries I would have sustained.
Good afternoon. Chair Korman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee. I'm Lieutenant David Ryan, Commander of the Maryland State Police Traffic Incident Management Section. I've been a Maryland State Trooper for over 21 years and have served in various field command billets since 2013. I also served on the Lieutenant Governor's Work Zone Safety Committee. I'm pleased to be here to provide a law enforcement and safety perspective relative to House Bill 513. As the commander of the Traffic Incident Management Section, I often respond to and supervise collision scenes that occur within highway construction zones. Work zones provide a unique and challenging environment for law enforcement. Citizen safety, worker safety, as well as officer safety is paramount. As you know, many work zones are currently staffed with a state trooper to provide scene safety and visual deterrence. These troopers are specifically trained to work within these zones. Recently, the state highway has provided funding for an additional trooper to specifically provide enforcement in and around the work zone. Additionally, Colonel Roland Butler, Superintendent of the Maryland State Police, has tasked each barrack across the state to conduct regular work zone safety initiatives within their respective counties. In 2023, the Maryland State Police conducted 276 of these such initiatives, which provided 9,214 hours of enforcement, made 8,124 traffic stops, issued 11,489 citations and warnings, made 51 criminal arrests and 45 DUI arrests within the work zone. Additionally, 51 criminal arrests were made within these work zones. This work is and will continue throughout 2024 and beyond. Many of these collisions occurring in work zones are related to 3 factors: speeding, distracted driving, and impairment. Enforcement combined with education often leads to a reduction in violations and provides for a safer Maryland roadways. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Ms. Vice Chair, esteemed members of the committee. I'm Michael Sacada, at the helm of Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association, championing the cause of over 20,000 workers who are the backbone of our state's transportation infrastructure. Today, I sit before you, not just as a representative of an association, but as a voice for those who risk their lives daily in Maryland's work zones. Our urgent plea is for the passage of House Bill 513, the Maryland Road Worker Protection Act, a beacon of hope for enhancing the safety of our dedicated workers. The tragic event on March 22nd served as a grim reminder of the perils faced by our workforce. It's a clarion call that we can no longer ignore. The workers are not mere statistics. They're fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters, some of whom are here with us today, whose lives are invaluable. Their safety is non-negotiable. The leadership of Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller in spearheading this bill is commendable. However, it's our collective responsibility to carry it across the finish line. House Bill 513 is more than legislation. It's a commitment to valuing human life above all else. It proposes stringent penalties for speeding in work zones and modernizing enforcement, directly addressing reckless driving that endangers our workers. The stark reality, as we have already heard, over 1,200 work zone crashes occurred in 2023 alone, happening amidst the 300 active work zones today. Each incident is a reminder of the urgency in which we must act. This legislation is our chance to make a definitive stand for the safety of those who build and maintain the roads we travel on every day. I also want to comment, this bill does not change the threshold that you're only considered speeding if you're going 12 miles over the posted speed limit. I implore you with the utmost sincerity and urgency to cast a favorable vote for House Bill 513 to change driver behavior. Let's honor the lives of road workers by ensuring the safety priority. Your support saves lives and send a powerful message that Maryland values the safety and well-being of its workforce. Thank you for considering this life-saving legislation.
Thank you. And Mr. Bostick, we're glad you're okay. And I do just want to take a moment. I know the entire committee appreciates the families of so many victims being here and advocating to make a change and a difference. So thank you for being here. Are there any questions for this panel? I do not see any. So we will turn, if she's available, to Ragina Ali, AAA Mid-Atlantic, who's a virtual witness in favor of the bill. Ms. Ali, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Can you hear me, sir?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, yes, sir. Good afternoon. For the record, Ragina Ali. I'm the Public and Government Affairs Manager for AAA here in Maryland, also representing Washington, D.C., and also a former Baltimore police officer. AAA is here in support of House Bill 513. We certainly recognize that automated enforcement, while not a panacea, is certainly an important traffic safety tool that can help not only keep our roadway workers safe, but certainly our police as well. AAA Mid-Atlantic has been supportive of Maryland's automated speed enforcement systems now for nearly 2 decades, working with the legislature in 2005 to first launch Maryland's pilot program for automated speed enforcement. And we've continued in 2009, working to expand that system to work in school zones. 2012, working with Baltimore City to address some of the issues with their automated enforcement systems, and then certainly honored to serve on the governor's work zone safety work group with the lieutenant governor and other traffic safety stakeholders last year and early this year. So we certainly recognize the dangers, and it should be important to note that work zones are inherently dangerous. We've certainly heard from other people, the gentleman who's worked in work zones. People are speeding through these work zones with little regard for public safety, little regard for the worker safety. And it's important to note also that while the workers are in danger, a lot of motorists, in fact, 80% of those killed in work zones are also drivers. So it's imperative that they slow down, not only in the interest and safety of our workers that are working so hard to expand our roadways and keep us safe, to protect our law enforcement officers as well. So AAA urges you on behalf of the nearly 1 million Maryland AAA members to urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. We'll now call up another panel of in-person favorable witnesses. You might have to rotate seats a little bit. Marshall Brown, LECAT, Chad Fousen, American Council of Engineering Companies of Maryland, Stephen Noel, Dimensional Products, Michael Higgins, Concrete General, and John Becker, Safe Roads, Maryland. If you folks are here, please come on up. Don't touch the button, sir.
Nope. Sorry about that.
No problem. Please go ahead when you are ready. Sir.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Mike Higgins. I'm the General Manager of Concrete General, Inc. I'm here today to speak in favor of House Bill 513, the Maryland Road Workers Protection Act. We're a family-owned, Gaithersburg-based highway contractor working primarily for MDOT SHA and MDTA, building and maintaining our roads across the state here in Maryland. with over 50 years in business and currently around 300 employees. Last year, on March 22nd, Concrete General lost 5 workers on I-695 from the crash. That changed our company, changed the victims' families forever. With me today is Kim Simmons, the widow of Stick Simmons and mother of MJ Simmons, 2 of those victims. Also here is Marissa Simmons. That was her father, Stick Simmons, and her brother, MJ. And Wanda Green, Stick Simmons' sister. Besides Stick, and I don't know if you would please stand up for me, Kim, Marissa, and Wanda, just to put an eye on, these are real people that were impacted on that day by that crash. So besides Stick and MJ, we lost Poncho and Carlos Escobar. They were 2 brothers that worked for our company. Chichi Ruiz, who worked for our company. And also Sybil DiMaggio, who was a KCI employee. She was the 6th victim that day. Over 100 years of construction experience was lost in a matter of seconds on a Wednesday afternoon around 1 p.m. by a driver who entered our work zone at over 100 miles an hour. We desperately need to see changes made in Maryland's work zones so this does not ever happen again. The construction work zone is the work office for our field folks. Every day, our workers are putting their lives on the line when they go to work on our roadways here in Maryland. We all need to do the best to help our workers go home each night to their families. The changes outlined in House Bill 513 are a step in the right direction. I ask that you do not forget what happened on March 22nd, 2023, and help make our office and work zones safer. Please vote favorably on House Bill 513, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Mike. You're welcome. Chairman Korman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is James DeRue, and I'm testifying on behalf of Chad Faison, Executive Director for the Maryland chapter of the American Council of Engineering Companies, in support of House Bill 513. I'm also an employee owner of KCI Technologies, a full-service engineering firm headquartered right here in Maryland. ACC Maryland is the business voice for our state's engineering industry. We represent nearly 90 firms employing more than 7,000 engineering and consulting professionals. Our members also play, in addition to engineering, play a critical role in ensuring that projects are built or constructed as intended by providing construction inspection personnel on our job sites, on your job sites. One such dedicated construction inspector was Sybil DiMaggio. With over 15 years of highway inspection experience, Sybil came to KCI to support the implementation of SHA's Transportation Systems Management and Operations Program. TSMO, for short, is a program designed to improve the safety, security, and reliability of our state's transportation network. Sybil was just 46 years old when her and 5 other roadway workers were killed tragically in a work zone along I-695. Let that sink in for a second. They were killed implementing a transportation safety project for the residents of the state. Hundreds of inspectors, just like Sybil, report to highway work zones every day in the hopes that their efforts will improve the conditions of our road systems. Aggressive and distracted driving, including excessive speeding, are unacceptable practices and endanger construction professionals. The provisions within HB 513 will allow the use of fully electronic speed control systems through work zones. While the state has identified several locations where these systems can be deployed, the program is currently limited by the number of systems in use on any given day. Multiple control systems and increased signage and speed penalties will provide the first important step in providing work zone safety within the driving public. It is our sincere hope that the state can find the resources to commit to a robust expansion of this program. Our workers' lives depend on it. Thank you.
Chair Korman, Vice Chair Boyce, esteemed members of the committee, I extend my gratitude for the opportunity to offer verbal testimony in support of HB 513, the Maryland Road Worker Protection Act. My name is Marshall Brown, and I serve as the Director of the Labor's Employers Cooperation, Education, and Trust in the Mid-Atlantic region. LESIT is a joint labor management association within the construction industry affiliated with the Labor's International Union of North America, or LIUNA for short. Our mission is to address worker issues with the welfare and safety of our workforce being top priority. Today, I stand before you in support of House Bill 513. This legislation is crucial for protecting our workers. High-speed work zones have taken a toll, as seen with the tragic loss of 6 lives on I-695 recently. House Bill 513 offers enhanced safety measures that can save lives and ensure that every worker returns home to their loved ones at the end of each shift. The measures include increased fines to deter speeding and reckless behavior, allowing the use of manned or unmanned speed control systems, issuing citations immediately for violations in work zones, and removing barriers to issuing citations during a 30-day warning period to ensure accountability from the start. Speed control systems make work zones safer by reducing accidents and saving lives, and ensure from reducing accidents and saving lives. We need to pass House Bill 513 to improve safety for our workers. On behalf of Lesset, Liuna, and our signatory contractors, I urge the committee to support House Bill 513. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mark Korman and Vice Chairman Ragina Boyce and the members of the Environmental Transportation Committee. My name is Steve Noel. I'm with Dimensional Products. Dimensional Products was started in 2001. We are currently we have 4 members on our team. We are based in Finksburg, Maryland, and our territories include Maryland, Virginia, DC, and Delaware. We were started with the goal of developing a truck-mounted attenuator. If you don't know, a truck-mounted attenuator is what's mounted on the back of a truck to protect the vehicle, the workers, and the person who would strike that vehicle in a work zone. We've since come to work with other devices, including permanent applications. I'm here today to speak in favor of House Bill 513. As we are all too aware from the recent events on I-695, there is a need for increased safety measures in Maryland's work zones. Every day, our workers are exposed to impaired, distracted, and careless drivers. I believe we have a responsibility to help ensure these workers go home to their families at the end of the workday. HB 513 is a step in that right direction. With this passage, the funding can assist in the implementation of new technologies and increase the use of current devices that are available right now. These include work zone intrusion devices, queue backup detection, temporary rumble strips, movable access gates, and autonomous TMAs. Recently, while working on the Delaware Memorial Bridge, an impaired driver crossed 3 lanes of traffic and struck a temporary barrier wall where my associate and I had been sitting the night before. Luckily, that night, we were on the protected side of the wall and avoided injury. For me, there has been too many close calls, measured in feet and sometimes inches. In closing, I would like to thank Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller for their hard work and for the introduction of HB 513, a positive step towards helping to protect Maryland's work zone employees. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to advocate for those in the work zones today, and I close by asking you please vote favorably for HB 513.
Thank you all. I do not see any further questions for this panel. Appreciate you being here, and again, appreciate the families coming with you as well. We do have an in-person favorable with amendment piece of testimony from Sara Sample from the Maryland Association of Counties.
Thank you to the chair. Thank you to the members of the committee for having me today. My name is Sara Sample. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties, and we are here to support this bill with an amendment. We have hundreds of roadway workers and highway workers that work for local governments. And so what we're looking for here is really just to extend parallel authority for us to be able to protect our workers, similarly to the authority that the state is receiving with this bill. And as you heard from the Lieutenant Governor, they're open to those amendments. And so we've been having those discussions with them. So we really appreciate that. And the only other thing I would add in terms of the reporting, I think this question was asked earlier to the state. When it comes to our speed cameras, particularly the ones in school zones, we do have to report pretty extensively on those when it comes to number of citations, how much money goes to the vendor, how much money comes back to us, number of people who work on those automated enforcement programs. So it's a pretty thorough report. I think it just got posted online. I can share that with anyone who would like to see it. But yes, we are favorable with amendment on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for MACo? Okay, and I just want to make sure, did we get John Becker from Safe Roads, Maryland? John, why don't you come up now? Sorry about that. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief. John Becker with Safe Roads Maryland. We are a nonprofit working on making our roads here safer in Maryland. I'm here briefly going to talk generalities here. As far as the legislation before you, it is definitely about time that we did something for the people who are working on our roads, not only in repair, maintenance, but even new construction. And as this gentleman here behind me on my right, who responded to an incident, it even affects the people who are responding to an incident when something happens, an accident or whatever. It affects those staff people from the Maryland Department of Transportation. It also affects law enforcement, first responders, fire, ambulance, even the tow truck operator, even the cleanup crew has to go out there. So this is very important legislation to start on the road of making things safe in our state. And with that, I strongly recommend, because based upon our review of the legislation, there are increasing fees or penalties as things move forward or repeated offenses. We urge you all, please, 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 pass a favorable report on this bill and also contact your fellow legislators, both in the Senate and the House, so this bill passes and we all can live a little bit better. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, that concludes the bill here on HB 5.